Leymah Gbowee received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 for her work in leading women's peace movements that brought an end to the Second Civil War in Liberia. She shared that prize with fellow Liberian Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Tawakkol Karman, in fact. A pleasure to have you as well, Leymah Gbowee. Leymah, talk to us, if you can, about the responsibilities of civil society. We've been talking about this cultures of violence, of men being involved in the decision-making, the peacemaking, women not being quite as present. How important is it for you, do you think, to have the civic and political engagement of women? And what kind of lessons can we glean from the Liberian context if we look at what's going on in Yemen, even though the conflict is hugely different, of course?
Thank you so much, and congratulations, Tawakkol, for pulling this off with the Fordham University family. And you rightly said it, the context that I come from is totally different from what is happening. But what I also know is that whilst contexts of wars may be different, the content, the experiences, and some of the solutions are similar. Humanitarian catastrophe has no border. So rape is rape, killings are killings, hunger is hunger, internal displacement and refugee lives are all the same, whether it's in Africa or it's in the Middle East or it's somewhere else in the world. So whilst the context may be different, the humanitarian catastrophe that the people of Yemen are facing now is the same that we faced several years ago in Liberia. You cannot overstate the involvement of civil society. The previous panel talked about people-centered, and there is no way we can have peace in any region of the world if the peace is without the involvement of the ordinary people. The analogy that I would give is, for example, this is a house where you have a father, you have a mother, and you have your children, and the house catches on fire, and then you're saying, let's just sit and wait for the outsiders to come and pour water on the fire. Or the outsiders are saying to the father, mother, and children in the house, don't get involved, don't touch anything until we try to figure out where the fire came from, how it came from. What is going to happen to that house is that it's going to burn. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can't start to deal with that fire if you have 5 daughters and 2 sons, and you're saying to the sons and the father, you be the ones to put the fire out. First thing first, the daughters, you need their hands, you need their intellect. So that's the case for involving women in the entire process. So civil society involvement is very key. Liberia, as you know, went to war, and we stayed at war for 14 years. When we went to war, we were about 3.2 million people. That was our population. Almost 10% of our population was wiped out as a result of the war. We lost 250,000 people. 1 million went into internally displaced camps, and 500,000 were refugees in different regions across Africa. We signed many peace agreements, maybe over a dozen. And every time the warlords would come back to say, oh, sorry, yes, I signed, but that was not my actual signature. During the entire process of the Liberian War, there was never women's involvement on the peace table. In 2003, not only did the women decide to launch a nonviolent action, but there was a conglomeration of civil society actors who decided it's about time for all of us to join hands and get involved in the peace process. So we came to peace, but the caution that I want to give the Yemeni people is that when we're talking about war and finding solutions to war, we're so focused on ending the violence that we never really try to do any form of strategy for nation building. So right now, everyone is just focused on, let's just end the war, which is well and good. But I think there needs to be a group of people in one room sitting down and saying, how do we redo Yemen after the guns have been silent? You need that kind of strategic thinking. because then these people have clarity. The mistake we made when we're looking for peace in Liberia was that we're only advocating for peace and not really thinking about the involvement of the youth, the involvement of the women. So yes, we came to the place where we had Africa's first elected female president. But the sad news is that we never really got the kind of parity in government that we should have had. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what would peace look like for the people of Yemen? Someone on the last panel talked about Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I was laughing because that is the general package that everyone tends to figure along with the UN that will unveil peace to nations. Peace talk, Peace and Reconciliation Commission, disarmament, demobilization, elections. And what we've seen time and time and again is that these formulas should not be a one-size-fits-all as the rest of the world tend to see it. First thing first, you need to ask the people in Yemen, is Truth and Reconciliation Commission really the way forward at the end of the war? Remember, you have ethnic crisis. Every valiant in the north is a hero to his people, and every hero in the south is a valiant in the north. So when you decide that we're going to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission or a war crimes court, remember that there would always be a clash because one warlord is seen as the hero for his people while on the other side. So how do we find something that everyone agrees with? That's the first thing. The second thing you need to recognize as we talk about engagement, I like the fact that everyone says R-E at the end of war. Reintegration, rehabilitation, reconciliation, everything RE stands for we're doing it over. So the question now is, as you're doing it over, what are those things that you're already fast-tracking in this peace process or in the process of looking for peace that is different from the old ways? For example, the involvement of women. I must say it was a really fantastic panel, the last panel. But I have to be a bit problematic to say that when there was the mention of women, the moderator, who did a very good job, was quick to pass over that. I don't know if I was the only one because I'm a feminist, no if, no buts, no whatever. You know, but he quickly passed over it when I thought that was the opportunity to really question the men on the panel, how they saw the involvement of women. Saying women should be involved is not enough. Getting the men to say this is something that we really think is necessary. If you have 51% of the population outside of a process, that process will never work. If you have gender-based violence as a key part of some of the reasons for war in the first place, you need the voices of women to come and be a part of it. Finally, when we say we're engaging women, we really need to start to think about what power they bring. If you go into Yemen today, I'm sure like Liberia, in communities, it's the women who are keeping it together. And the questions we need to ask now is, in the midst of crisis, how are you doing it? How are you harnessing your power? Once we find that, or how do we engage that power and continue to involve these women in the process of peace building? When we talk about transitional justice and the other panelists talk about we need to lock them up, let's be very realistic. The World War I and II ended years ago. They're still arresting people. Timing is very key for justice. No one is saying impunity, but let the whole strategy for justice be timed in a way that it is working alongside peace. One of the mistakes that we make, those of us coming from the global south and from different parts, is that we look at what happened in Europe and America and try to use it as a yardstick for solving our problems. Context is different. Content is the same. Humanitarian catastrophe has no borders. But let's be very wise as we try to unveil peace to our people. Thank you.